So this didn't actually happen to me, rather to a close friend of mine. He told me this story a few hours ago and I wanted to share it since I don't think he has a Reddit account. For the purpose of the story, I'll call my friend Jordan. Anyways, he lives in Hayward and was attending a march for the Black Lives Matter movement at around 4 p.m. I don't know what street or anything specific like that. He had just sent me a couple of videos of the crowd marching and taking a knee. So after about 10 minutes, he said they were passing through a street lined with shops and alleyways. There was an older man sitting on a curb by the alleyway watching the march. Jordan describes the man as looking upper 40s, wearing a black and white flannel shirt and jeans and a cap. Jordan had the misfortune of walking nearby said alleyway, and the man stopped him, saying something along the lines that he needed help fixing his passenger seat, since the recliner handle was broken and it was a two-person job to get it back in its upright position. The man gestured towards his car, which Jordan examined. It was a black Chevy Malibu that was parked in possibly the most sketchiest part of the alley, right towards the back, kind of hidden behind a trash dumpster. Jordan declined and quickly walked away before the man could say anything else. Now, for his sake, I wish the story ended there, but I wouldn't be sharing it if it did. I think sometime later, like an hour maybe, Jordan decided to start heading home while the march continued. He says he was cutting across some field that was in between houses, where only 2 other people were in sight, and as soon as he emerged on the other side, his air was suddenly cut off as a thick arm wrapped around his throat and began aggressively yanking him backwards. Of course, Jordan yelled as loud as he could, and thankfully the aforementioned 2 guys began to rush to his aid, shouting at Jordan's attacker. The guy let go and pushed Jordan. As Jordan stumbled forwards, he spun around and saw the guy who had asked him for help with his car, hopping into the Chevy Malibu and speeding off. The 2 other people asked Jordan if he was okay and comforted him and whatnot. Keep in mind that Jordan only told me this over a few texts and I haven't gotten a chance to talk to him in public about it, so some details were spared. I think Jordan contemplated calling the police but didn't think it was worth it. He told me that they were probably already busy enough and he might be ignored or have an extremely long response time, to which the only info he had was a description of the guy. He hadn't gotten the guy's license plate. Jordan went home, and that's pretty much all he's told me so far. It might sound cliche, but please everyone stay safe. These are terrible times with all the looting and protests. Stuff like this is bound to happen. This was the most terrifying night of my life. I live in Minneapolis, within the same neighborhood where George Floyd was murdered and where protests took place over the past few weeks. This incident happened just 3 days after his death, sparking protests along with the looting and destruction of properties, right before the confirmed reports of white militia and white supremacists creating mayhem along with the protests. I'm a woman of color and I live with 2 other women of color. My lone apartment unit sits on top of an establishment on a very busy street in Minneapolis, just a few blocks away from the MPD, but a different precinct from the one responsible for Floyd's death. To the sides of our unit are other establishments in which I can access their roofs through our windows, given how close our buildings are. It helps serve as a fire escape, ironically. The protests have started moving up toward my street but are still a few blocks away, as I can hear helicopters circling around my area. It was around 11 p.m. and things started getting a little quiet but unnerving. It was just one of my roommates and me home, and we've been following the protests and its route via Snapchat map. After conversing with her about an escape route just in case our safety and home are compromised, we agreed to pack a bag of essentials, toiletries, electronics, and important papers, and a few changes of clothes. This was heartbreaking to do because we worked so hard to obtain this home, given our circumstances and facing adversities along the way. This apartment was our place of peace. As I packed, I heard some faint shuffling noises outside my window. I stopped everything an inch closer to my window, hoping that it was nothing. More shuffling ensued, as if there was different sets of feet moving around. My blinds were down, and it took everything for me to decide to survey the noise. I slid my right index finger between 2 blinds and pulled one down ever so gently and peeked. My eyes met with those of a man with piercing blue eyes and pale skin under a black mask. He wasn't alone. I looked around the rest of the roof and saw another 4 to 5 figures crouching on the roof, all dressed in black. I froze but held my gaze and heard the man with the blue eyes yell quietly, "Run, go, get off the roof," and they all bolted. I ran to my roommate to tell her and almost suffered a panic attack. She calmed me down and told me to finish packing while she stayed looking Well, she stayed looking out on the roof to make sure no one was there. 5 to 10 minutes later, she confirmed that the owner of the building came on the roof to survey any damages, if done. We ended up staying the night at home, given the civil unrest transpiring outside our doors. We heard all kinds of noise that kept us up at night and couldn't sleep awake. Morning came, and while my roommate slept, I removed the barricades I had put in front of the door to the street so that I could see the state of my building and neighborhood. The business window next to our door was shattered, and the owner of the establishment under my apartment asked to speak. He had spoken to our neighbor and informed me that someone had poured flammable liquid down our neighbor building's vents, almost lighting it on fire, but left abruptly. My stomach dropped and I physically felt sick. He also said because our buildings are one of the oldest on the block, it would have burned in 5 minutes. The people I saw last night on the roof had poured flammable liquid down the vents, and if I didn't catch them and they had lit a match to set it ablaze, I would be homeless. I went back upstairs to my room and just cried. I felt so helpless in the situation from last night and was anxious at the possibility that they may come back to finish the job. I called in at work and my job was very understanding regarding my situation. This incident rendered me vulnerable and I felt utterly useless. I'm very thankful for the community I live in because later that day, there were many reports coming in and confirmed that people kept finding kerosene and other flammable liquids being stashed in bushes all around my neighborhood. There were also many reports of white militia and white supremacists rolling in with big trucks and big guns just chilling nearby. I've never seen them before in my neighborhood and definitely saw them that weekend. Minneapolis is a pretty busy city and really has no room for hick type of behavior. I wonder if they had anything to do with what transpired on the roof.